Right, we have 5 o'clock on Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. Call it Public Works Committee meeting to order with a roll call, please.
Seth,
Here.
Todd,
Here.
Andrew,
Here.
Tanya,
Here.
and Cindy's excused.
All right, we got first period for public comment.
We have a handful of people online. If anybody wants to make public comment, they can do so at this time. Think you're good, AJ.
All righty, moving on to number 3, approval of committee minutes from January 13th, 2026.
This is Tanya. I'll move approval of the minutes of January 13th.
Todd will second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Number 4, discussion with possible action on-call pay and salary increases for utility positions for 2026.
Well, this was one of those, this is kind of old news. So when we do the Public Works, looking for next year's pay rates, I give them to you as Public Works, but then realize that what got passed was the general fund budget, which means that a formality of approving the utilities also same amount, right? Because I was across the board, isn't included in the general fund budget. So this is our way of making sure that everybody is approved to receive the pay increase that we had for all of Public Works, save myself. So that was at the 7.5%. So I can certainly talk more about it, but that's what the street department got across the board. And then we would just want to make sure that utilities get it too. So.
And when we, as a budget team went through the wage increases and look at comparables, that was always the plan. But as Sarah stated, we approved the general fund, but we didn't specifically approve the increases for the utility. And she talked about formality, like really from an accounting and auditing standpoint, it's always good to look back at that and say like, yep, we did have formal approval for these pay increases for the public work. So it probably is just a little bit of overkill, but when Lori and I put our heads together, like we got a meeting come up, let's just make sure we do it right.
So do you need a motion?
Yes, I do.
Todd will make a motion to pay the on-call guys a salary increase for the utility position 2026.
Do we have a second?
This is Seth. I second.
Right, we have a motion and a second.
Joy, just to make sure that the motion's clear that we are, I didn't hear the 7.5%.
Oh, I didn't say that.
Okay. Joy, that's in your motion, Joy?
Yeah, I do have that written down.
Okay. Seth, you okay with that as well?
Yes.
Motion and a second. Roll call for this. Let's do a roll call.
Oops. My apologies. Todd.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
Andrew.
Aye.
Tanya.
Aye.
Seth.
Aye.
Right, motion carries. On to number
Great, thank you. It's true.
On to number 5, approval to advertise for bids for asphalt and concrete curb on East South Street.
Okay, so this is getting us ready to do the work that I've been talking about for a while on East South Street. So if you remember our conversations about non-lapsing funds, most of that amount, or at least half of that amount, would be funneled into fixing up. So South Street in general on both sides needs work. And we have hopefully a plan for West South Street if our funding can stay in place for these kinds of projects in 2026, 27. But we were looking at doing East South Street in-house. So it ends up being like 230 feet and 250-ish feet. Because if you look at East South Street, we did Washington all the way through. We did Rusk all the way through. So there's like a gap in between, and the same sort of things happening eventually, obviously Rusk and then Center. So we obviously need to be careful too about timing, because we're going to be doing construction on Center Avenue. And so we'll make sure for 2 reasons. One, that we don't disrupt traffic flow too much, but on the flip side, also want to make sure that we can say that they can go at similar timeframes so that our bidders bid good numbers, right? So if you're already mobilized. So in any case, this is approval just to advertise. So I will, basically, we're gonna act like a general. So there'll be a bid from the asphalt contractors to put the asphalt down, but we do have curb in that section and often we leave it in, but that one, it's pretty rough. So also would bid out a bid for curb separately, not together, because we want to, be able to work with those parties independently. The curb work is probably not going to be over the $25,000 threshold, but when they look at that, what the threshold is triggered by is the whole project. I'm not allowed to be like, oh, this part's going to be over 25 and this part's under. It has to be looking at the whole project, and the asphalt alone is going to be over 25,000. So that's why I'm asking for that. Happy to answer any questions, but this would be coming out of the non-lapsing funds and the material maintenance budget.
Matthew's already doing Center Street, right? So you'd think they'd give you a good bid, but
Right.
it is Matthew. I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, same thing with Agelli is doing the concrete curb work. And so like I've talked to them, I'm like, look, I can see your price here. Be really great. We can coordinate timing. So again, though, they have to be the low bidder. So we'll see what happens. But it definitely helps drive our prices down. So looking for approval to advertise for bids. Obviously, the bids would come back and we'd review what the numbers are and things like that. No.
Well, this is AJ. I make a motion that we approve to go to advertise for bids for asphalt and concrete curb on East South Street.
Tyler, second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Hi.
I don't know if I heard Seth, but motion carries. On to number 6, approval to advertise for bids for general asphalt work citywide.
Okay, so this is one we've done for the last 15 years, probably many more than that. So that's just when I showed up. But basically, we got bid prices for a variety of different types of paving. Could be like a walking path, like in the Park Bowl, which we know we're going to end up using because we had the water leak down there. It could be alley work. It could be patches. We use this for patches predominantly on the utility side because we're doing water leak repairs or whatnot. But it can be used for anything. And it's also one of these, I find, handy things because right off at the beginning of the year, I've locked them into a price. And so then if I come back for something later, I know that it can't be over that because they've already told me this is a price for like a general amount. So then often I'll ask for another bid for something specific and then they're even less. So like it's a good strategy to hit them early. So yeah, just looking for another advertisement for bid.
This is Tanya. I'll make a motion to approve advertising for bids for general asphalt work citywide.
Tyler,
This-
second.
Right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Perfect. Motion carries. Number 7, discussion with possible action on city comprehensive plan.
All right, this is a big one. The reason I say that is I think there's a lot to this. So we're going to just start because there's a lot of sections in the comprehensive plan. We might want to think about what some of the things are and decide later about how we want to approach them. We also could take a look and go home and think about something that we'd like to add that's not here already, right? So we are one of all the different committees that are going through their sections in the comprehensive plan. So what I was going to do is share just the goals section. I've done some highlighting of things that I think we should look at. I will say, so we're predominantly sections 3 and 4. I will say that it is different reading this in this format versus the whole document. So the first time I went through everything, I went through it in the whole document. And then I feel like sometimes it makes the goals make more sense because like, it's like, well, why are we talking about, the what, like multimodal stuff, like the smart bus in this section. Well, it's because they, that you see how they group the transportation and it's like a whole bunch of different aspects. So that would be something good sometimes, like if you have extra time to take a look back to the full document, because this is just like excerpts from the full document. But this also helps us be more concise, right? So transportation, is a big section, obviously, predominantly our stuff. And so the first goal is to ensure a safe and efficient and well-maintained transportation system for all users. I should take a step back. I didn't write this, just so that, so this is like the comprehensive planning, people taking their feedback and putting it into a document. So just knowing that when I'm looking at this. So Nate and I kind of walked through some of this.
Sarah, can you just quite a bit? Just present. There you go. Perfect.
So when Nate and I looked at this today, we went through some of this, not all of it. He kind of talked about how they were trying to narrow down like some of the goals a little bit more, because like that could really mean anything. So that's one part of it. I think if we go through this whole goal, we can kind of go back and pick things out too. So objectives under that were improve the connectivity and traffic flow, while originally it said maintaining neighborhood safety. So I was playing around with words with that, considering it might not be the right word, but I think one of the things that we've talked about a lot at department head meetings and things like that is just making sure that we have like this connectivity through the city for safety purposes, as well as like having your neighborhood that doesn't feel like there's a lot of traffic. And so that was the only reason that I looked at like changing that word a little bit. But that's obviously an important part of what we do. Reducing congestion and truck traffic impacts in the downtown area. So we added the mitigate the negative impacts of I can't say that one, truck traffic in the downtown area. Again, it's just a suggestion, but I think still, an important part, right? We do have a lot. I mean, pretty much all traffic in the city uses Main Street for everything, right? It uses it for all the trucks that we have. It uses it for people navigating the city just to go from north to south. It's the downtown that is historic, and there's people that want to walk around, and there's people want to cross the street to go to school, and like there's all these uses. So we have heavy congestion on our Main Street because it's just used for everything, right? So it is certainly something to think about. I would say the one thing that when I highlighted this originally was like, it does have air of bypass or truck route, you know what I mean? Like there's only so much. So I really wanted to be careful about like, what were we trying to say there? Because we certainly don't want to like make a policy decision that's not thought about, just written into here as an objective. Long-term planning, sorry, go ahead.
So to that point, by changing the language in number 2 means that alternate truck routes are not an option for the.
I don't think so. I think it was just trying to say like, what are we saying mitigate the negative impacts? So like we were trying to figure out some words, but like
Well, I mean, because it used to say reduce congestion and
truck traffic
which
impacts
to
in
me
the downtown.
sounds like the only way to reduce truck traffic is to send
You
a
read it the
different
same way
way.
I read it, which is funny because Nate read it differently
No,
than
because-
that.
Because specifically it said reduce congestion and impacts, or it said reduce congestion and truck traffic impacts.
Yeah.
In the downtown. It
Oh.
didn't necessarily say reduce truck traffic, but
Got
that
it.
would obviously be.
But
You're
that's what
right.
I took
You're
it
right.
as too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I'm not saying we should do it or not do it, but it's just like, I just want to make sure like what we're saying is what we want to say there. And then I realized there's 2 impacts. So that's just something to talk about. I think I'm not as worried about wording today as about concepts, because there's a lot of like stuff that might get moved around and things like that. So this is one that Nate and I kind of talked about, and it kind of goes with the connectivity thing, is like the long-term planning and connections and educating about like connector and roadmap. So like, again, trying to make sure that we're balancing like the dead end neighborhood with the ability for like emergency services to access places, right? Because I know that's one of the things that comes up for the fire chief and emergency services is having like not to make it so laborious to get into certain parts of town. Enhance bicycle or pedestrian and cyclist safety at key crossings and corridors. Maintain and upgrade local streets in a cost-effective manner. So like all those things were in there, which are kind of maybe a little more like could be split up differently, but I think those are what they have as objectives of this section. And then it's kind of always not always easy to figure out like exactly where they're going with some of the things, but then there's a recommendations that talks a little bit more. So their recommendations is conduct a traffic and circulation study to identify improvements for east-west connections and north part of the city. We've really done that a lot already. And I run into that a lot in this document is like, it's either a lot of these things we're already doing. Yeah. So I didn't know if we should, that's why I put like continue or like playing around with some words that the idea that it's like, we will always, maintaining our circulation system or something like that, that just kind of says like, we're going to keep doing it, but we certainly have looked at that. And that's why we have what we're going to be doing in the future with the Hanson Farm and the Walmart traffic light. The same thing, like work with the DOT to manage truck routes and improve safety along the appropriate state highways and Main Street. So, they're coming at this like with hearing a lot of public input. And I wonder if, there was a conversation we had for a while there about should 56 not go in front of Eckhart Park? Should it go down to Broadway? Like, I wonder if at some of the feedback that they were hearing about the truck routes, because there's not a lot of options for us. But at the same time, like when people bring up ideas, we're consulting with the DOT and talking to them. So it's not like we've never done that. And when we had that question come up about where 56 should go, I mean, it was them talking to us and giving us feedback about why they've chosen to not have it go that way. So expand use of traffic calming measures. So that's like a lot of what we were doing in the downtown. Bump outs, medians, pedestrian beacons where pedestrian activity is high. And continue regular update of capital plan for street resurfacing, drainage updates, and sidewalk replacement. So again, I guess we'll stop for feedback, but you can kind of see like there's ideas that are kind of bouncing around a little bit in terms of like maybe we could organize things a little bit differently. I put continue because that was just my reminder word. Like we're already obviously having the capital improvement plan and plan for the drainage upgrades and things like that. Yeah, I don't know. I'll stop there. I know you've been scanning it and making notes. I don't know if folks have feedback in specific areas. Is there something there that that's not what you want to see, or we want to clarify it, or is there something missing that you'd like to see in that section?
Anybody have their feedback? Tony?
I think the only thing that I had in my notes was that, and I could see this in a few areas, but if we're ensuring a safe, efficient, and well-maintained transportation system for all users, then we should put in the recommendations that we implement the bike and pedestrian
Sure.
plan and I know it comes in get goal
It's the
2.
next
I just
one, yeah.
personally think it should be in both and I struggled with like, what's the difference between goal 1 and goal 2? And it seemed like 1 is about safety and 2 is about expansion.
Right.
And, but the bike pedestrian plan's about both. So,
Sure.
and then the only other thing I wondered about is down in goal 2, there's a statement about winter snow maintenance of pedestrian routes that I think
sure.
should go up
Yeah.
in goal 1 if it's about safety. So it was just to move that one up.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Well, we can certainly.
It was really interesting when Sarah and I got in the room together because I struggled so much with the organization of these goals. And she was doing a really good job of focusing on the content thereof. And so I couldn't get past sort of what you're dealing with of like the goals. Goal one is very overreaching and could consume goal 2 and 3. And so I think tonight I hear what you're saying and I agree with you. And but part of it is just I think she said to me, like, let's just focus on the content and the concepts, and then her and I later will sort of work to rearrange the document so it works in a logical way. Because we ran into the same issue with the HPP and the Corp, where they put it together in a way that made sense to us, but it's not the way our brains on ground level work. And that's just the work that we need to do, is just to reorganize all the content in the right way.
Okay, well, we can always go back to things because sometimes we'll see things later that maybe should have been talked about earlier. Okay, so or goal 2 rather, expand and enhance multimodal transportation options. And obviously the bike and pedestrian plan's number 1, which is, I think, good. There's so much there. It's why reiterate the entirety here. But we do highlight something. So like improving connectivity between neighborhood schools, parks, and employment centers was really a part of the plan as well. But it doesn't necessarily have to be bike and pedestrian, right? So like connections, because there talks about like rideshare programs in this section too, right? So multimodal transportation, and he's like, what does that even mean, right? And it's like this really broad spectrum. So I think, I feel like it's a little easier when you're like in the transportation industry to like that word, because like traditionally in the recent history, it's been really focused on like single user vehicles, or like, how is the person in the car getting from A to B? And really multimodal is like everything else, right? So it's like making sure that there's access by all different means of transportation. It could be a bus, it could be a bike, it could be just access off-road, right? That like pedestrians could use or whatnot, right? There's not really a lot of things that are not considered multimodal. It's more of the thing saying like the idea of a roadway can be used for more than just a car or a truck, right? Like a freight truck. So increase accessibility for seniors, youth, and individuals without personal vehicles. Support safe integration of Amish horse-drawn vehicles into the transportation system. And I highlighted that because I think that's the one thing that I haven't. So when we talked about Main Street, we certainly thought about it, right? Like the 4 lanes to 3 lanes, like where would the Amish buggies be able to transport that would be like people could go around them? And that was kind of like when the DOT talked about it, that was why the twiddle's in the middle and that it's so large, like there's access for people to kind of like go around them. I just wanted to highlight, like, I want to make sure that if it's one of my objectives, I would say that I'd probably take it a little bit further than I have in the past, right? Like, rather than just sort of like, is there a space for folks? Like, do I want to truly integrate that as a part of the transportation system? I don't know. I was surprised when I saw it there. Not that it shouldn't be there, but it was just like, oh, wow, okay. So something to think about. And then just the recommendations for that: prioritize new trail and sidewalk construction that connects schools, parks, and the downtown.
Right. So I'll just piggyback off that, because I think you brought up a good point. Is like some of these things are choices, right? Do we really want to make sure that when we're designing roads, transportation systems, that the Amish population is given, careful consideration, and that we actually are building in accommodations to them? Because at this point now, it sounds like it hasn't been the directive. We're like thinking about it, but it's not necessarily a central focus. And so what part of, I guess I gathered from you, Sarah, and correct me if I'm wrong, was like, how much of a focus do we put when we're designing roads on the Amish population and horse-drawn carriages, right? Like, is that something we want to make sure is a consistent priority, or is it not? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and sorry, I would have dwelled on it more. D sort of talks about some of those kinds of things. to help give some ideas.
Oh,
I
sure.
think.
Yep, you're right. I
Yeah.
was jumping the gun a little bit there.
Okay. So that A was like, that is what the bike and pedestrian plan says, is like schools, parks were like the priorities of people using multimodal transportation. So that makes sense. Increase bike parking and improve winter snow maintenance. So we certainly could move that. And that again is one of those things that came from the bike and pedestrian plan largely, was like making sure pedestrian routes were accessible in the wintertime, and then people saying there's no bike racks anywhere in town to use, that kind of thing. Again, is that our recommendation? I mean, we can certainly have a conversation about how that gets done. I took out the expand partnerships with Passenger Transit Inc. and explore regional transportation opportunities was the line before. And so I was trying to, I made my note generic, like, just a transportation of a local rideshare program. And explore regional transit opportunities. So again, it was one of those, this one's probably not me. It's probably more Nate, but just kind of like, I don't know how
Right.
that specific.
Essentially what it's meant to get at is that does the city have an interest in continuing to maintain our local rideshare program? Right? That's right. The Viroqua Cab Company. Yeah, city taxi, right? Like, I would assume that the answer is yes. Like, we really need to maintain that and continue to invest in it and figure out how to make that sustainable long term. And we did that recently with like fee restructures and things like that. At the same time, the regional transit, the smart bus, it was a close call this past year, and will it survive into 2027? Who knows? But this is basically, how do you want to, is there a push? Do we really want to put some time and effort into making sure these things remain? That's what that's getting at, right? And so like the regional transit, it says right now, explore regional transit opportunities. Well, we have a regional transit system that's in jeopardy of failing. Should we think about focusing on that one before we explore additional opportunities?
And D was like, I was trying to sort of figure out, it's, I was trying to figure out how I could word it. I mean, so obviously it was design signage and roadway accommodations that improve safety for horse-drawn vehicles. So like we were kind of playing with like, give consideration to roadway accommodations for improvement of safety for horse-drawn vehicles. I mean, I don't necessarily have signage that we are using in town, so it's like, it is a big step to like, I was trying to be, try to honor the idea without like, I'm actually designing signage, which I typically don't do. So I don't know if that's goal 3 and what's in it. Goal 2 and what's in it. Is there anything that stands out I'd like to talk about?
Well, first of all, I think if we're going to talk about safety, that goes up in goal 1.
Yeah.
But, I don't know what to think about the Amish one, because I mean, I think it's, in some respects, of course, they're a big part of our community, and that, and we want not just them to be safe, but the people driving cars to be safe
Right.
as well, right? So, but at the same time, it also feels like a can of worms, because does that mean then we're deciding which roads that they should be
Right.
on? And then we are establishing new rules, and then do we have to draw them into the conversation so that we understand what their needs are, and that, so it feels like a much bigger pot for me. So I'm not telling you I'm not suggesting which way we should go. I'm noticing that
Yeah.
it's a big deal. And
Can-
did you want to add to that?
Can I pick off that, Tanya, a
Yeah.
little bit? Because I think you bring up good points. When we were doing the comprehensive outdoor rec plan and the HPP, especially with the historic preservation plan, Cindy in particular had some anxiety about some of the suggestions and recommendations that were in there and feasibility of them, and like, what kind of rabbit hole does that take us down? And do we have the ability to do that, right? All very real things. And so we ended up using a lot of language that was things like explore the idea of what accommodations for Amish you know, it wasn't committing to that. We were absolutely going to do it, but they were going to look into it further and maybe there's a balance. So some of the things we can't figure out tonight because even ourselves don't know
Mhm.
what direction we want to go. And
Yeah.
so just so you know, I think the feeling you're having is one that often came up in our couple other plans. And that's something that we can use as kind of just say like, we don't have to decide now if we want to do
Yeah.
it,
Oh, yeah.
but we can maybe dedicate our time to looking into it further.
Mhm.
Would that be then like on number 4 would be explore support, like explore safe integration,
Right.
Or yeah, additional amenities looks like,
explore
or
supporting safe
right.
integration of Amish horse
Mhm.
farm? Yeah.
Has there been any problems with with the horses now? The Amish? I know there's a lot of Amish in
Yeah.
Viroqua. I know that. But has there been any?
I'm not sure. Like, I haven't directly been involved in having to address any concerns that I've heard, but I think that maybe the police department might know more than I do about that.
Ye- I haven't, I mean, again, Sarah's right. It would be more in the police department's wagon about what maybe are some issues or complaints, concerns they have from safety. I do know like some amenities relate to their horses and what they do during like busy parts of the season. Are we just expecting them to tie them up to stop signs and telephone poles? Is that appropriate? Is that the best we can do? Or do we want to think about other options or directions or rules regarding that? I mean, I don't know how much we can do, right? I think that's the hard part, but that's the extent of my involvement with them.
Mhm.
Only one that I had was with like the regional transit with the smart bus. Like, I know we don't know the future. And I don't know how to like go about it, but like La Crosse's input, like West Salem, like I work in West Salem. A lot of new businesses opening in that industrial park. I don't think Smart Bus goes that way. And I don't know if we can loop and get more cities involved to try to like get them. I mean, obviously that cost goes up because now they gotta drive to another city. But if they can get more people to ride,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's
Yeah,
kind of,
I was gonna say too, I agree with you, AJ. I think we need to continue to support any regional opportunities that come our way. Without being specific that it's the smart bus per se. I mean, I still can't believe we don't have public transportation to Madison. On a regular basis. Like, so many people, so many students go to school there and don't have cars. How do they get home? Well, we gotta go pick them up. You know, I'm like, it's just strange to me, but I think I would definitely want it included in there that we are open and supportive of regional opportunities. And
Maybe, yeah, and so maybe that's a good way to say is like maintain current regional transit and explore expansion or additional opportunities. So
I mean,
it's-
how much do we want us like to be it coming from us or accepting and being open to and
Yeah.
supportive of opportunities that come our way?
It's probably more the second, right? Because like the smart bus is run by La Crosse County. We don't have the horsepower to take that on, but we can be at the table and show our interest in it and be engaged in the conversations, which is something I haven't done in the last 7 years. I've never been asked to be at the table, right? But if they're saying like, hey, this is important to us, we want to invest, what are your guys' plans? And just making sure sometimes it's just being at the table is the best support you can give on the
Mhm.
financials. Anyway.
Absolutely.
Can I add something else? I really think that the implementing the bicycle and pedestrian plan is a recommendation, not an objective. That really bothered me that it was up in the objectives.
Nina had this exact conversation. Clearly, that's what needs to happen.
Like, what?
That's, way to go, Tanya.
Thanks. And then I just have a question about what you guys think about this, but I think that some of these things like prioritizing new trail and sidewalk construction in that way of connections between neighborhoods and amenities. About, I know we don't have development standards per se, but there's a number of times throughout the comprehensive plan that I'm like, can we say something in there that says these things should be added to development standards? I don't want to be like overly prescriptive, but there's just so many things that I'm like, this sounds like a development standard that we should have when we're looking at the next development. I mean, we're often struggle with like how to communicate what we want with developers without, putting a damper too much on projects, right? Like there's a balance, but an overall, I mean, we don't have development standards per se, do we?
We have a subdivision ordinance,
Right.
which gets into that. But if you're talking about individual development standards on a lot, right? We have zoning.
I mean more of a bigger development,
Right, so if you're
not just
getting
a
it,
single.
if something falls into the effort of like going into a full subdivision plan, we do have our subdivision ordinance, which is where most likely your
So
expectation.
then that's what I'm saying is that these things, can they be connected to that via the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, well, we also have design guidelines, which is essentially the standards for road widths or water main type or
Mhm.
sidewalks are actually in there. And then it's supposed to be like, this is the accepted. And then if you want to veer from that accepted standard, so we certainly could add some of those like concepts. Do you have a specific example? Are you thinking about like
Well,
connectivity
for example,
between?
yeah, I do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like the connection, like in the bike and pedestrian plan is the recommendation that when we are making a development, we make sure that we leave space for a bike path that goes through it, right?
Right.
Or a walking path that goes through it. That's the connection on either side. When we, there's other things in other sections here that talks about like some more of the landscaping stuff around stormwater and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I just want to make sure this stuff ends up in the subdivision ordinance or in the design standards. Because I'm afraid that just mentioning it in here won't then
Right,
get
yeah.
extricated out in future conversations. So I don't know how to do that, but I just wanted to make sure I mentioned it.
Yeah, no, good point.
Thank you.
Because I agree too, like some of them get very specific to put, for me, when I look at like the future ones in future chapters, like I'm like, oh boy, that's a very specific, like best management practice. And maybe not like, I get the idea, but like the specifics. So, okay. I'm making note and I'll think about how to integrate that better. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, right. I'm making notes. Hopefully they're legible later. Okay. So I think we could do this next one and then we can decide if we want to move on because there's three parts to the transportation one. The utility one, the community one actually may be okay to do too. It's kind of more concise, I think. Okay, so goal 3 is strengthen regional connectivity and support economic development through transportation investments. So leverage Viroqua's location on key state highways for business growth and tourism. Improve access to regional airports and interstate highways. Maintain and enhance the Viroqua Municipal Airport to support business and recreation and coordinate with county, state, and federal agencies on transportation planning. So some of those are obviously not us, like the leverage Viroqua's location is more of a business development, economic development. Like you guys, don't you have like some sort of like database that says what local, like it's like a state database that says that you're on so-and-so highway, you may or may not have rail access. Does that ring a bell at all? I remember going through
Yeah, I
this,
mean,
yeah.
WEDC has a platform with Locate in Wisconsin that gets to that point. Again, it's an interesting objective because it's either there or it's not, right? Like I can't pick us up and move us. If it's saying that it's leverage it by promoting it or communicating it more often, sure. But I fail to see how objective one has been manifested into like action steps or recommendations. Like that's part of what I need to go through it. But you're right, Sarah. That's probably a little bit more in my wheelhouse right now.
Do you know what I mean? We'll just leave that one there. You can do with it what you will. Improve access to, yeah, so the airports, I mean, obviously it's kind of along the same line for number 2, right? I mean, we're not going to move the Viroqua location.
Right, like out of all those, number three, maintain and enhance the local municipal airport. Yes, that's directly within our wheelhouse, and we can find some action steps on how to do that, whether it's promotion or investment in their infrastructure or whatever it may be, succession planning. That one is easy to understand. Some of the other ones are gonna need some work so that they're actionable, right? Like, well, of course they're objective, so it's like, what do we want to achieve by doing these recommendations? It's just, how do they trickle down into tangible action steps?
Right. So 4, obviously, we're already doing, it's always good to do more. And sometimes that's like, so most of the time I'm reaching out to them. I'm looking for money or want to change something or want us to examine something. Particularly with the state, I would say that's sort of like our biggest partner. We don't get a lot of the federal agency contact in terms of like federal highway. County, we probably could do more with, although, you know, it's more of a jurisdictional thing. I think a lot of the work that we end up doing with the county is like helping each other out, you know, like, I don't know, we need an excavator, or can you sand this area versus like, coordinating where the county's putting their roads, but, we certainly do that already to a certain extent. I'm always looking to explore grant funding for multimodal infrastructure, so I think that's kind of like a continuation thing. No, I know. And then I put in there, continue to work with Vernon County and WisDOT to ensure transportation investments align with local growth and economic development goals. A lot of so certainly like the business park on the north end of town is integrated with the DOT. And if we were to develop more to the south, I would say would also need like their permissions, because we have that unique designation as a connecting highway. So we have a little more leverage, but we still don't have autonomy from them in those areas, right? Like we still can't just pull out the light and walk away. Like the DOT would not allow us to do that. So without permission, obviously. So I mean, you know, it does align with growth and economic development, but a lot of it's just our own development within the city, right? So, yeah, we can kind of play with words on that one. All right. Should we dive into this next section? I think Cheryl being here, it would be a good idea to just review the utility stuff. But there's not a lot here. Like one of my frustrations with it was like, okay, so goal 1 is utilities and infrastructure ensure reliable, efficient, and sustainable water and wastewater services that can accommodate current needs and planned growth. So pretty general. But like all the objectives, like plan for long-term capacity in water and sewer system to accommodate residential, commercial, and industrial development, taking into account new planned housing units and population increases. Like this is like basically tell us to do our job. You know, so it's like, okay, we got it, you know. Extend utility services in a cost-effective, coordinated manner with priority to areas that can be served by gravity flow by sewer. Well, yeah. Again, same thing. So like, I guess we can read through this, but one of the things I was thinking about is like, I don't necessarily know that we should take things out of this section per se, but like, is there something we should be adding, like a goal that we see for the utility? Because like, I feel like it's pretty straightforward, and whereas like the infrastructure or the transportation section talks about like where we want to go with things, like this again is just kind of telling us to do our job, right? Like maintain compliance with our water and wastewater regulations. It's like, yep, we're on that, right? So the one thing, this first one recommendation was messily written. I was trying to work through it, but it said originally plan for preparation of a utility service area plan, identifying expansion priorities, lift station needs, and cost estimates. Sorry. Maybe it's because my brain is in this all the time, but to me, that doesn't really, one, it's very repetitive, but it also, again, like this is our job. But so I was kind of working with like, we do have asset management plans and we do put together service area plans. So I was gonna work it around just kind of like continuing to work through all of that. Continue preventative maintenance and upgrade schedules for wells, mains, lift stations, and treatment systems. Pursue funding for system upgrades and capacity extensions or expansions.
Sarah, what do you base your projections on?
Sure. So, excuse me. When you're doing a design, say we were like making a significant upgrade to the wastewater plant like we did, you always project at least 20 years out for your facility. And so, and then in that you look at like what your expected growth is. So, things that we are kind of aware of, like when we did the wastewater treatment facility, we were doing the business park. So we knew that there would be like more pressure on the north end of town, and, did some estimates based on what we might think would go out there. So that's sort of how we go about it. But then we're in a fortunate situation, at least in terms of the wastewater facility. Depending on the kind of waste we get, we have actually a lot of volume capacity for the most part. And so we're not sort of like at that threshold where we're particularly concerned. Depending on the kind of waste it would be coming in on the sewer side, we did design for like modulation. Like we have what we have now, we have plenty of capacity. If something came in that 20 years that was like, you know, say that whole business park just expanded and there was like a new industry that was using water, we probably should add another digester. Like, you know, we kind of compartmentalize, or we should probably add another reactor like basin. So we didn't necessarily fully project out our 20 years at the wastewater plant for things that we weren't going to be touching already in the upgrade, because we didn't want to spend money unnecessarily. So we're in a pretty good position. So there's not a lot of, in terms of capacity of our treatment and water system, supply system, you know, we're in a good spot. We have a decent amount of capacity. And so we are not spending a ton of time working on future projections because we have wiggle room.
Oh.
We obviously have things that we need to do, like the main infrastructure, the sewer mains themselves, our lift stations, that kind of thing. But I think the thing that you struggle with when you're doing design work is you also don't want to over anticipate development. So interestingly, Viroqua's demands haven't changed hugely even over the last 20 years, right? Like our fluctuation in population's not been great up or down. You look at the DOA, they've actually projected Viroqua to like go down in size. It's a challenging science. So you want to also be conservative in your future projections to make sure you're not like over designing and overbuilding things, because sometimes they're actually harder to operate when you have all this extra capacity. So I don't know if that answered your question. It was
No,
really
it did.
random.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So I don't know if there's anything in here, like, not saying this is necessarily one of them, but like I'm looking for things that I feel like maybe are a little more outside the box than
What do you want?
what's
What do you
here. I don't
fix?
know.
What do
I
you
mean,
say?
one of the examples, and this is not necessarily a recommendation, but we've been talking for a long time about like how to do renewable energy at some of our facilities. You know, like I don't know if that's like something, I feel like we just could use more than the like really basic, straightforward things that are here. I'll think about it more too, but if there's things that you guys think of as well, and at the same time, like Nate and I said, if things work and they're not really like that in front and center for people to bring new things, like maybe that is just the way it is and it's okay to just provide what we need to provide and do a good job about it, you know?
Right. And again, I think she brought up some of those things is this is future planning, right? And so Sarah already mentioned about the wastewater treatment facility and plans for future updates, and starting to be forward thinking about those is maybe a pretty simple goal. Because we, like, even if things are going super well and cruising, you know, the idea of it for Cheryl's like, oh God, here we go. But
It never ends.
it never ends, right? And so even if things are going super well, a lot of it is maintaining that and being prepared for, you know, every 10-year updates or every 20-year updates.
Yeah, to say, even if things are going well, we're still gonna spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
We gotta keep everything working well and not. What do you think, Nate? Should I pause it right
Yeah, we're
there?
probably at a point here where we're running out of runway.
Well, and we're also getting to one that I think is a pretty big section. There's a ton of stuff about stormwater management, which is awesome. But I think there's a lot to like dig out there and ideas because I feel like we need to be clear about what some of these things mean. And then I also think about a lot of what's there is awesome, but maybe not for Roqua's job. Like for Roqua can help with, and maybe that's the county or whatnot. So
Yeah.
we can table it or finish
A-
here until next
And
time.
Sarah mentioned this as part of our preamble to this, but again, there's a lot here. Public Works Department touches a lot of the comprehensive plan. I had noted to Cindy because she was not here tonight. It's like, this isn't going to be the last time we talk about this, but as a committee, right, as a Public Works committee, but we do need to get going on it, right? Like we need to get rolling. So
So tabled for the next time?
I don't think you
Or
actually need
pause.
a table. I think it's just
Right, yeah.
it's
Continue.
move to the next agenda item.
Okay.
now.
Alrighty. Let's see, number 8, construction project updates.
Well, I don't actually have a lot of updates for you because it's been really cold. They were doing a little bit of work, but a lot at the Hanson farm, but a lot of what they're doing is on hold. They might actually do a little bit of work tomorrow, but they don't plan on working much Thursday or Friday. So, good. I mean, in terms of like us putting that trench in, we are obviously not working on it this week. We thought we were, so we were supposed to start today. So we'll see how the weather dictates our schedule. So that's about it for construction, I think.
All right, street and utility department updates.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Well, I'm just continuing to work on the audit. The audit person moved up our requirement date by about a week. So Lori and I are planning on how we're going to get all this work done a week earlier. We can completely do it. We just have to figure it out. We're interviewing for our administrative assistant this week, a little bit last week, a little bit this week. Beginning of the year reports and just working on getting all my year-end expenses in and budgets and all that kind of good stuff.
Let's see. I was not actually expecting I'd have much time for this. And I've talked to you a lot lately. Yeah. So I guess on the street side, obviously the guys have been out another big weekend. We have had a couple meetings about on-street parking and how to do it better. So like a lot of it's been staff meetings. So there was some debate about whether we were able to tow because of just having a towing company available, which we do. And so we're hoping to have things smooth out a little bit more. We also have been working internally about like the notification. So we made sure the website was updated and we're now on Everbridge, not Nixle. So things are a little bit different. And we kind of have come around to this idea. We've tried a few different methods. But what seems to be hopefully the best path forward is Wade or whoever's acting in Wade's position at that point is going to be directly connecting with Trina, who is the public information officer, so that there's not like, he doesn't have to get a hold of Rick that then gets a hold of it's just like the two of them are talking. So they did that today with anticipation that there'd be some snow tonight. They're still sort of working through it, but hopefully our message is clear. And then Rick's gonna, he had, I think it was like the third big snow event. They had other things going on in the police department that night. And so it made it more challenging for them to get out there and do the compliance work they needed to do. So we just kind of been regrouping about our execution hasn't been perfect, but we're trying to continue to make it work for everybody. So let's see. What else is a big one? I am working, trying to get some funding for the landfill. I got a lot of people telling me not the right fit, but I tried again. But I do have two leads. One is loan funding possibility, and the other is through the CDBG program. So it's a community block grant. It was interesting because they have this urgent funding need, which would have meant that this project would have exceeded our debt borrowing capacity, which it wouldn't. Like it would get close to what we've self-imposed, but it's not like our state mandated debt limit. So that one we didn't qualify for. The normal path that you would apply for is actually coming up right away. And they're like, yeah, you totally fit in this. But they also have one that's called special projects, which is the one I'm really gunning for. And it was really interesting. They said, submit this information. We'll just kind of give you a quick feedback. And one of the things I thought was that they might not allow us to use our community-wide benefit. And they did. But then they said, well, it's not urgent. And I was like, okay. So I'm working on that part because I feel like there's certainly conversation to be had there. And if that's the case, I think that one might actually work for us. So keep your fingers crossed. And it is a 50-50 grant. So, hey, we're spending whatever, $2 million or whatever it is, getting $1 million is amazing. So I'm going to keep pressure on that one. It was nice to finally hear somebody say, oh yeah, that might work. Like, yay. I think that's all I have for now. Everybody's coming in now and it's almost 6 o'clock. So
All right, we thank you guys. Let's move on to second period for public comment. Anybody in the audience? Anybody online?
If there are, they do not seem.
All righty, I
like
would
they're
take a
jumping up and make
motion to
public comment.
adjourn.
Todd will make a motion to adjourn.
This is Seth. I'd second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Motion passes. We are adjourned.